Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Sean, what's on your mind today?
Well, lots of stuff, but there's one thing in particular I've been waiting to tell you about on the microphone. I'm probably well known for complaining a lot, right? But, traveling, hotels, coffee shops, whatever. But man, I recently took a trip. In fact, I think it was a trip where we captured the interview we're going to play today. On this trip, TSA, and on this particular trip, I used my wheelchair. I do that every now and then. Inevitably, you've been there, you get up to the TSA line and you got to take a few things off your bag, whatever. I have pre-check. I think you do too. So typically you don't have to worry about shoes and light jackets and things like that. I have never, ever had a TSA agent come out and help me load my stuff into the belt or the conveyor x-ray thing.
Right.
But on this particular trip here in Sacramento, a gentleman came out from behind the detectors and was like, here, let me help you. And he put my backpack, he took my jacket, my phone, kind of put it all together for me, put it on the belt, and he was like, I'm going to wait just a minute and make sure it goes, it gets on the right belt. Or, you know what they say, like, don't walk away until your stuff's taken or whatever.
Right.
So he waited a minute or, a while to get it on the right belt. And once it was rolling away, he was like, all right, let's go. So I'm just impressed with how attentive this man was and how helpful he was as a TSA agent. Now, I've had plenty of other passengers be like, hey, would you like help or can I grab that for you? But this guy just came out and started moving my stuff in a polite and helpful manner. And I was impressed. I'm like, are you new? Like, is this your first day? You're not jaded yet, are you? Like, I was floored. Have you ever had such an encounter?
Yeah, I think so a couple times, but it is really nice, right? Like, it's
very
not
rare
norm.
too.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I agree. That's awesome. And for a second, you feel like you're a person and not just a animal moving through the line.
Yeah,
right?
hurry up. Yeah, there's definitely some dignity with that approach.
Right.
And I think I remember one other positive TSA encounter, which I mentioned here last year, right? The guy found my water bottle in the backpack and it had water in it. So he was like, do you want me to dump it out so you can keep it or do you want to go back in line? And he politely got rid of my liquid and let me keep the bottle.
Yeah.
Whereas most were like, I can throw it away or you can go back in line.
Was it at the same airport, those two things?
No. That'd be impressive.
Hey, all right, good interactions with TSA.
Yeah. So a little shout out to TSA in Sacramento and TSA in SeaTac.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, folks, we've got an incredible interview for you today. We talked about how we traveled to Uplifting Athletes Young Investigator Draft in January or early February, and Rivki Nair is one of those people that we were able to secure some time with and meet face-to-face and have an interview with. Well, she's our featured guest today, and to give you a little backdrop, Rivki is a mom with a lot of experience. And when her youngest baby wasn't developing the way she was used to, she started to realize something's not right, and she began seeking answers. She ended up at, as she'll mention, CHOP, which is the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Rivki's youngest son, Ellie, was diagnosed with CTNNB1 syndrome. CTNNB1 syndrome is typically caused by de novo mutations, which Rivki will break down for us momentarily. These mutations can lead to a loss of function or altered function in beta-catenin. Though CTNNB1 syndrome can affect individuals differently, it often manifests as cerebral palsy, autism, and intellectual disability. It often causes cognitive impairment, behavioral challenges, epilepsy, sleep disturbances, dystonia, issues with the eyes and vision, feeding difficulties, scoliosis, and literally the list goes on. Most children with CTNNB1 syndrome need extremely close supervision and require intensive physical labor to care for. And as you're about to hear, Rivki and her family are doing their best to help take care of their son and brother, Ellie. Please enjoy our conversation with Rivki Nair. Hey, we're sitting down with Rivki right now in a random spot in Pennsylvania, and I'm so grateful that you joined us today. We got connected through our friend Effie Parks, the host at Once Upon a Gene podcast. And I told her, hey, I'm traveling to Philly soon. Who do I need to interview? And you were the first name that she threw out. So Rivki, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. It's so nice to meet both of you. And yeah, Effie's great. I'm so glad I got a chance to meet her as well.
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
We're grateful for her. So Rivki, we're curious. Start wherever you want. But who are you? What's your connection to Rare? And glimpse of family life for you.
Absolutely, yes. So I got married pretty young in life, and Ben and I have 6 children. Yeah.
Wow.
And that usually shocks people. It shocks me as well.
What's the age range?
They're a year and a half apart. So my oldest is 14 and the youngest is 6.
And folks, you can't see it, but Rivki looks like she's 14. like not old enough to have a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean that as a compliment.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't get offended.
I don't know
by
if there
it.
was a better way
Not
to take
at all.
that.
Not at all. No, I tell people it's because I dissociate half the time, so I forget that I have my children
Fair.
or whatever stress I have. But they're also fun. I enjoy playing with them. They're very sweet.
Nice.
Yes, and so my youngest, Ellie, he's 6 years old, and he's the one with the rare disease. He was diagnosed before he was a year old. That was over here in CHOP. And that's with CTNNB1. CTNNB1 syndrome is a rare disease, and it's the way that he was diagnosed was through the whole exome sequencing. So before he may have gotten the diagnosis of cerebral palsy, because when he had an MRI, so his brain came out as normal, but his body and his behaviors were not neurotypical. So what could have been a cerebral palsy diagnosis turned into a more specific diagnosis of CTNNB1, which is that one part of his gene that's missing.
So is that what brought you in to find answers, is that he wasn't moving or behaving like a normal child?
Yeah, so I think that because he was my 6th child, then I noticed some things right away that weren't right. And it was, getting a lot of pushback from people. That's the normal way, that you just don't know how to deal with your child. And I kind of had those messages with my first son as well, who would cry a lot of times.
Yeah.
And they would tell me, it's because you're a new mom, and he knows that you're a new mom.
Wow.
So this time when I saw certain things that he wasn't feeding correctly, and he was really distraught and crying excessively. And again, he wasn't lifting his head. And I said, this is not regular. There's something here that needs to be checked out. And it took time. It took connecting with the right people who were not dismissive and knew where to guide us. And I think that when I had a physical therapist actually tell us when he was 4 months old, tell us that you should go to the genetics department in CHOP, my husband and I were really shocked because we said, we have 5 children before. Why would this be genetic? And I forgot AP Bio, that how how sometimes there's de novo mutations, and that's what ended up happening. And I'm so glad that we did connect to somebody who had that foresight and could tell us to try something different.
I didn't have AP Bio. What does de novo mean?
Yes, yeah.
You probably know that.
De novo is spontaneous, so it's not inherited. It's not inherited from either parent. It's just spontaneously when the child is being formed that there is a duplication or a deletion.
I see.
Yeah.
I'm glad you asked because I don't remember.
Yeah.
I just assumed that was like,
right.
There's a 1 in 25% or 1 in 50% chance that you'd pass it on. So I just figured de novo was the other part that gets skipped.
Like recessive, I see. Yeah. Right. No, de novo is spontaneous. It's basically a spontaneous.
Wow.
Yes.
So you used to be a teacher, right? So this was a teaching moment for all of us.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So there's so much we can unpack there, especially when you talk about the messaging you were getting from the professionals in this space. But I want to stay with your family for a little bit. So you have 5 kids, and then you have Ellie,
yes.
the 6th one, and you start noticing things aren't right. Then, of course, eventually you get answers. How's the impact been on the other kids? Like how, especially the older ones, I assume they're loving, but what's it like at home with everybody and the very last one changing your world completely?
Yes. Yeah, that is a very good question because it did impact everyone in the family and especially all the other kids. And they are loving to him, and they do sometimes to a fault because I would like for him to try things like to walk more.
Sure.
He does know how to walk, even if he doesn't particularly like it, but he can like give a little whine and then they bend down and say, Ellie, come for a piggyback ride. And they just like cart him around. Or if he starts whining, they're like, I know what he wants. He wants a book. So they do spoil him. There are the challenges as well because it's difficult to attend events with him. So I think my daughter, yes, she had a performance in school, a choir, and we had a babysitter lined up for Ellie. And it's difficult to find someone who knows how to deal with him.
Sure.
But she canceled last minute. So we brought Ellie and that didn't work out. So I took him out and my husband stayed and we tried to switch back and forth. But my daughter saw that we both weren't there. And that was hard. That was hard as parents not to be there and feeling frustrated. And I think for the other kids, they know that they don't have maybe a standard family and that we can't go on vacations. We can't go to a restaurant. We can't do things spontaneously as a family because of Ellie. And they know that. And I think that they do express their frustration. And it's really important to me that they do that because I want them to know that all of their emotions are welcome. And I think because we allow them to say things like, I hate Ellie, or he's so annoying, I wish that he was normal, and things like that. And I can validate that, and my husband can validate that. And we can sit with that and say, I know, it's really hard. It really messed things up. Sometimes like you really wish we could all go and sit down together. We can all do things like your friends do. Then I think that opens up the space for them to love and care about him.
If there's some freedom in being encouraged to express yourself, whereas I just feel it in myself, right? If somebody says I hate my little brother or whatever, the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, you can't say that. You can't hate him. And it's just a different approach. But I imagine that's going to bring about some freedom, especially as they get older. They better understand how things are just out of control. Or out of our control, I should say.
Yes. And I would say that also the way that other people respond to Ellie also comes from that place of fear of certain emotions, that they're afraid to see frustration that we may have with Ellie, to see certain hardships that we have with Ellie. So they like to smooth things over and say, oh, but he's so cute and he's so sweet and he's so smiley. And they don't want to hear the other parts because it's this polarization that you can have one, but you can't have the other. We can only see you being happy and loving parents, and we can't see you being frustrated with him. And it's too scary to go there for some people. So they don't want to hear it. They don't want to see it. And they just kind of want that one dimension of positivity.
Yeah.
Like it only has to be, it only
That's
can
a
be
good
one.
point. Yeah. I would almost label that level of positivity as a bit toxic. Not toxic in the terms of, always the sun is always shining. Like there's a different realm of toxic positivity, but if we're unwilling to face the hard stuff, that's damaging as well.
Yeah. Well, and like for your kids or for a child who has a sibling who has a rare disease, if they're not expressing those feelings, they're suppressing them, and then they resent the fact that they have to suppress those feelings, and that's another thing to resent. And it probably just builds and builds, right?
Yes, definitely.
I mean, so we were talking earlier. I know you're a therapist, so you're like, yeah, of course. Like, that's how it works.
Yes. Yeah. I became a therapist later on. My husband, actually, he's a clinical social worker. So he's the one who introduced me to the world of feelings, because I did not grow up with the world of certain feelings. We don't feel a certain way because certain feelings are scary. If you're sad or if you're angry, we don't want to see that because we need to fix that. We need to fix that. That's too frightening. So also don't be too happy. Not any extremes. We want to make sure to keep things even keeled. And the idea of even being okay with emotions and being able to laugh about certain things and having that sort of dark humor, or being able to notice like the ridiculousness and things and the challenges. That was something that I really learned, and I started to delve in deeper, and then decided to make a career out of it and become a therapist.
Wow. So do you do that full time?
I do it part-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So raise the kids.
Yes.
And part-time. What's your focus when it comes to therapy?
So I'm trained systemically. So I work with families and with couples, but even when I work with individuals, I work with a systemic lens to see how families impact individual lives. We don't live on our own. So that is something that is important, the internal system and the external system.
Well, now I'm just afraid to talk.
I know, right?
I feel like you're judging me.
Oh my goodness. That I'm the last. Whenever someone's afraid that I'm judging them, I always tell them, like, my life is a mess. Please, I'm the last person to give judgment to anyone.
Oh, that's funny. So what would you say is the personal mission of yours, whether it be in the world of therapy or rare disease or family? What is something that gets you out of bed every day besides raising your kids?
Yes. So raising kids, I think definitely the idea of inclusivity and making sure that people see my son in places that they don't normally see people like him, and that even when it makes other people uncomfortable. So if he's in the children's section in the library and he's making little screaming noises and people are looking, and, sometimes I put a shirt on him that says autism with my phone number and my husband's phone number on it, because he has a tendency to run off. We haven't lost him, thank God, yet. But so people can see and they can notice. And even if they ask questions, and kids will come up and ask me, why is he doing that? And educating them and keeping him there as opposed to hiding him away. That's important to me.
Yeah, I love that. We've talked about it before, but just being out and being seen and being a part of everything that's a part of advocacy. That's advocating for yourself, just to be out and be doing everything that everyone else is doing, that you want to do.
Yeah. I know that it was difficult for me to go to the playground for a while after my son was born. It was only until he was maybe 3 years old that I started to feel okay. I would take him out, but I remember coming home to my husband and saying, where are all the kids, the neurotypical kids? Where are they? Why do I not see anyone in the park in a wheelchair with braces on their legs, not playing maybe with everyone else, playing in a different way? Where are they? So when I can introduce that to other people and let them see that this is the world we live in. We live in a world with diversity and with people who may not present the same way as you. It's very important to me. And so other people can also feel comfortable bringing their diversity as well.
Yeah, it's huge. It makes me think, I almost want to compound our community where we all live in the same place and everybody have their issues, and everybody will be okay with it because we're used to it. Maybe not familiar with everything, but
I also, I haven't thought through this enough, but we're always talking about find your tribe and find the people. And I believe in that 100%. But at the same time, does that thought seclude us from other people? When we find value and kinship in talking to other people like us, does that seclude us from the rest of the world? I don't know. Or maybe it's a balance where you need both, I guess.
That's a good point. That is a good point. Yeah, I think I definitely feel more comfortable with people who get it. I definitely feel like there is that feeling of, okay, you understand. And then there is a feeling more of a mission with other people that I know also I've learned not to expect certain responses and even not to personalize certain responses and to kind of be there as a way of teaching other people. But for the place where I feel connection and a sense of community, it's with the people who have similar experiences. And I do feel that connection and that sense of comfortability.
Yeah.
So what I'm suggesting is, staying kind of close or being in a community, but also going out and about and doing things normally. Because then it's just easier when you have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other people, your posse or whatever, and you go out to a movie or you go to the mall or you go to a theme park. And you've got other families or other people that get it and get you, but you're not the only one that's abnormal or the only one that's presenting differently than the majority. I feel like that alone would kind of give you a little more confidence to go about life the way you want.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's get back to some of the messaging you heard early on, because we've talked about it on the show. And I think every rare disease family has had a similar experience where, mom's concerned. The doctor says, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Sometime later, no, it's a really big deal.
Yeah.
We don't have to spread hate on anybody or any system. But when you were first told, don't worry about it, or whatever those early messages were, did you think for a minute, like, okay, yeah, they're probably right? Or did you always know in your gut that something wasn't right?
Yes, again, that's a really good question. And I think that a lot of times, because I am more soft-spoken, people think that I'm less stubborn than I am. And I might even say, okay, to the doctor who tells me that he's fine, and then I'll find another doctor on my own. Like, then I'll be like, okay, and then just go on and find someone else. And I think that persistence was really important to me. Hearing messages from family members and from physicians and saying that he's fine and that I'm overreacting, pushing forward was really important, and doing it, I guess, in my way. Don't do well with conflict. So having that back and forth with the doctors was not exactly my way of going about it. But then I would be able to call the insurance company, ask if I can go for a second opinion, and just push forward in that way. That was the way that I went about it. And for me, it was really the therapist through early intervention, so the physical therapist through early intervention, speech, and the other therapists over there, the ones who helped guide me, because they're the ones who see this volume of children at this very young age who display these behaviors which are not neurotypical. And they were the ones who were able to guide me to the appropriate physicians who would take me seriously.
So I'm curious, I feel like most people that listen to our show have already received a diagnosis, right? So they're kind of over that first big hurdle. By chance, somebody isn't. Would there be a message you have for families that are early on in their journey? Like, no, I don't want to be cliche or put words in your mouth, but don't take no for an answer. Or how would you encourage a mom who is soft-spoken and maybe not as strong-willed as you, and kind of, like me, I just, whatever the doctor says, I go with.
Yeah.
I don't research, I don't argue. I'm like, all right, cool. Which is probably not a good thing, but for families in that position or in that same mental space, how would you encourage them to keep going or keep moving forward?
Sure. I would definitely encourage them to be curious. And I think that curiosity goes a long way, because then when you start to look things up and read research papers and ask people, to start talking to people, then you start learning things and becoming more curious and having more questions and saying maybe there could be an answer to this. Keeping on asking for more pieces to the puzzle. So you may not get the full answer, but certain pieces along the way. So yes, I received first an MRI of the brain for my son, and that showed that it was normal. And I could have stopped there, but kind of like still being curious. Then he had an MRI of his spine that indicated a tethered spinal cord. And then the whole exome sequencing that gave us more answers. And a lot of those pieces of the puzzle along the way helped with that encouragement, because I felt like I was getting information along the way.
Yeah. I love the word curious that you use that in that concept, because it's not forceful, it's not passive. It's like, no, just I want to find out so I can figure this out. There's no emotion attached to it, or like, and I don't know, maybe at times there needs to be emotion, obviously, but that word curious and that concept of curiosity, I love it in something like this, where you can detach the emotion and find out as much as you can to put those pieces together.
Yeah, that's true.
What is something you feel like you've learned since your son's diagnosis? And take your time. Yeah. I'm putting you on the spot.
There is something that I've learned, and there's an element of vulnerability in terms of sharing it. And my family culture growing up, when thinking about people with disabilities, physical disabilities or mental disabilities, was definitely one of pitying them and also being frightened of them and staying away from them, because they would just evoke too much emotion of anxiety and sadness. So you just stay away from them. I went to an all-girls school, and at times they would invite different communities from the Down syndrome community to come and join us when we had different school events. And I would see certain friends of mine had a strong connection with these people, with these individuals their age or even older than them. And they really had such a loving connection. I would say, they're so fun. I love them. They're so genuine. They're so real. And so like I couldn't understand it. That wasn't part of my world. And when I received my son's diagnosis over the phone, so the first thing that I asked him, like, is this going to be a physical disability? Is this a mental disability? And when they said, no, it impacts him mentally, and it's an intellectual disability. So that was something that I was like, I can't get over that. The physical disability, fine, but not the intellectual disability. And that was a big growth opportunity for me, to start looking at people in this non-elitist way of that just because someone cannot maybe meet me at the same intellectual level, then therefore they need to be pitied, or therefore they need to be seen as less than. So this was a strong area of growth for me, to be able to see people in a genuine way with their differences, and not just in a cliche way of we're all the same, we all have the same soul, and we all have feel similarly. This was a way of really challenging those notions of that hierarchy and that elitism that I think I did feel, and also that fear of being able to interact with people who are different than me and different than what is considered normal in this world.
Yeah. I think that for me, before I was diagnosed with FA, I lived a normal life till I was 15 years old. And when I would see somebody in a wheelchair or somebody with a disability, I would feel sorry for them, poor thing, or think whatever of them, right? And now I obviously find myself in that situation, and my thinking has obviously changed. And sometimes I think, how do we help other people get to that place that aren't in this situation, And I guess I don't know the answer to that. Maybe I'm throwing it out there because I think it's a really important thing. Like, your son helped you unlock a different dimension, a different way of seeing. And how do we help other people unlock that without actually being in the situation? I don't know. Maybe there is no answer to that.
I don't know what the answer is, but to me, that's a form of advocacy, but takes the focus on education. When I think advocacy, I think, sitting down with their senator, fundraising, things like that.
Right.
But really, maybe it is just having a conversation at a coffee shop about, hey, actually what you're feeling right now makes sense because this kid or my son or that kid or whatever they're different. And we've just explained that it's okay to be uncomfortable with that, but to sit in it for a minute and realize just because they're different doesn't make them less than, or just because they can't meet you on the same level doesn't mean they should be put away.
Right.
Yeah,
I think, it's about conversation, opening the door to that dimension, right? And whether or not somebody chooses to like go through the door or like actually think in that direction is up to them, but that maybe it's up to all of us to like present that opportunity to learn about something new.
Yeah. And I think those are the conversations that end up happening when I take my son out into the world. And sometimes, you'll have adults approach and then they'll say something like, "Oh, wow, it must be so difficult. It must be so hard." And then I'll try to share with them certain parts of Ellie that are special. And I'll say, "Yeah, and if you show him that picture that you have over there, he'll be really happy and he'll be able to point out certain things. And, he really loves hugs," and they start to see more than just his disability. They start to see more of what he is unable to do. Yeah. So I think with different people, you have to meet them where they're at. Yeah. So certain people, you can take them you can take people one step at a time. And I think assuming that you can take people to a place of complete inclusivity, I think that can lead to frustration. But to say maybe this person can take a step to level 2 and this person can take a step to level 7. Being able to gauge with each person what they're capable of.
Partly, if they don't take the step you're expecting, we have to be okay with that too, right? We can't be frustrated with the person in that situation if they don't take the opportunity that's presented to them.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is that it requires an immense level of patience.
Yeah.
On everybody's end, but especially our end as a disabled individual, as the caregiver. Kind of in this vein, one of the lessons I've learned over the years is, when you're giving a knee-jerk reaction or kind of, biting back, it doesn't really lend itself to a conversation that's productive.
Right.
I still get high temper. I still have knee-jerk reactions, and I want to rip somebody's head off for parking in the wrong spot. But the reality of it is, if we can kind of get past that mentality of it always happens and everybody always does it this way, it never, and those kind of concepts, and be a little more open and willing to, I guess, not get angry or not have a reaction, and just explain why this or why that, we might have people more often be open to hearing this, the other about the condition or the lack of being on level 7 or whatever it may be. I think of restaurants or even TSA, right? We've all flown once or twice. Generally, the energy at TSA or at the security checkpoint is, this is nobody's first rodeo. Take your shoes off, take your jacket off, and move through the line. The way they talk to people, they're herding sheep or cows, right? They do it all day, every day.
Yeah.
But for the folks that are maybe a little bit elderly, or they're young, or they just haven't traveled much, or they haven't traveled in a long time, they don't really know what to do and how to do it. And when you have a TSA agent yelling and just kind of pushing you through, that creates some anxiety and frustration and anger, and now nobody's having a good time in the line. So I think of those situations where if TSA or a server or a worker in a retail environment would just be okay with answering the same question or the same inquiry 1,000 times a day and realize that everybody's interpreting it differently or experiencing it differently, they're going to have better experiences for everybody involved. That
Yeah.
was a really long explanation. I hope it made sense.
It's a good metaphor, though. Yeah.
Point is, don't be like TSA.
I think we can all agree.
Yeah.
Go with that.
Yeah.
I think we all agree with that.
So, Rivki, you were talking about, telling people if you show him this picture, he'll get a big smile on his face, or, if you give him a hug or whatever. What is your son like, and what makes him smile?
Yeah, so my son really likes books. He likes to look at books, and I'm a reader, and I love to read, and I always I thought my children would enjoy reading as well, but they don't really share my passion in reading. And then God gifted me with one son who enjoys books, and that's Ellie, and he loves books, and he could just read books all day, and he has his favorites, and he wants everyone to read books to him all the time. So he loves books. He loves trampolines and jumping on things.
Nice.
He likes eating things that aren't food. That's another favorite pastime of his. So our couch has like pieces missing in it.
Wow.
Like my kids are used to like fishing things out of his mouth. Like, look what Ellie ate today. I'm like, great. This is exciting. It's like a game show. What did Ellie eat today? So that's another pastime of his.
All right. I mean, my coworkers see me eat things off the ground all the time.
Okay.
Actually, I did it earlier today. So
wonderful. So you understand
spirit.
some of Ellie's shenanigans. Yeah.
When you think about and look at your son or your entire family, what are you proud of?
I'm proud of the family culture that we've created because Ellie is treated differently than the other kids, and he does get more attention than them. And my kids love to say, Ellie is your favorite, but that's okay. We know why he's the favorite, and he's our favorite too.
Oh.
So that culture that they know that he does require more attention. And at the same time, they also know that that's okay and that they're part of that. They're part of that giving to him and making him feel like he's the most special.
Rivki, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and sharing a little bit about your story. Is there anything else you want to add or throw out there before we say goodbye?
Thank you. It's really been an honor to meet both of you, and I'm so glad that you've made this your mission to connect people from all different areas of the world and all different connections to the disabled community. And I really do appreciate it. It's very important work, what you're doing. So thank you.
It's been so fun to meet you. Thank you. Sean, what a powerful conversation, something we can all relate to. I really appreciated how Rivki made me feel so at ease.
Mm-hmm.
She talked about them encouraging their kids to feel the feelings and to express them because that's how we understand things. And I think we can all notice that relates to every situation, not just rare disease, but that was the part I really liked.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I love that she said she's most proud of the culture that her and her husband have developed and are fostering in their family. And I'm proud of that too. I don't know her that well. I've never been to her house. I've not met her family. But man, just hearing the way they're approaching what they're up against as a family and recognizing that they're in this as a family, not just mom or just mom and dad or whatever. Like everybody plays a part, and I appreciate hearing the way Rivki and her husband are doing life with their kids.
It gives me hope for humankind, I think.
Yeah, and I'll go as far as saying too, Kyle, this episode is probably amongst my top 10 now.
Yeah.
In the editing process, I replayed this episode 4 times, 3 times in one night. Like I was at the gym and I just kept hitting, do it again, do it again, do it again. Everything about it is incredibly encouraging and affirming and positive. And, sure, there's, I don't want to paint, it's not all rainbow and sunshine, but the fact that you're up against these kind of challenges and you're still able to love life and give yourself to others is pretty powerful.
Yep, I agree. Sean, let's move into thank you notes. Both of us realize the power of gratitude. So, who do you have to thank today?
A couple episodes ago, we talked about Rare at Sea and how that first cruise is coming online in about a year from now. Well, as kind of the lead planner behind that idea, I am so incredibly grateful for Rivki, who serves as our travel advisor, our travel agent. He's doing all the hard work in that regard, getting families booked, and we've got a handful of families booked, deposits paid, and we're moving toward having a fun vacation together next February. So, Rivki, thank you for helping me put the details together for this trip.
Yeah, he seems to be really great at the personal stuff. Like he's remembering every person and doing everything that they personally need to make this trip awesome. So he's really great.
Yeah, we've got about 12 families or so booked right now, and I have a feeling if things go well and say, in future years we get 20 or 30 or 40 families, I think Rivki might fire me. But nope. I can handle 12 or 15, but more than that, you're on your own. So anyway, it's a lot of work, and I appreciate Rivki. Kyle, who you saying thank you to today?
I shop at Trader Joe's. It's right near my house, and I've had some great interactions, just brief interactions with the people there. And this one the other day, it was, no big deal, but I go up to the checkout counter and I asked the guy if he knew when the next weather was coming in. Just some dumb small talk, right? Just
it's like
whatever.
Like a 43-year-old kind of question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And he's like, I don't know. I haven't looked lately. And
because he was probably 20 and did not care.
Yeah. Well, and that's the feeling I got. However, he finished up my thing. He gave me the receipt, and then he pulled out his phone and he checked the weather for the next couple days. He didn't have to do that.
Nope.
And so anyway, he told me, I was like, oh, thanks. And so it was just a pleasant interaction.
Yep, that's pretty impressive. Chances are, at first he was probably like, are you kidding me? Why are you asking me? But then after a minute, he started to replay it, and he probably thought, oh, this guy in a wheelchair, he probably doesn't have a smartphone. Let me look up the weather.
That's true, yeah.
But you know what? It's service like that, a little personal touch that makes all the difference. And now that Trader Joe's is going to continue being your Trader Joe's because of people like him. Well, thank you for listening today. And of course, a big thank you to Rivki for taking time out of her day on a rainy Friday to join us for a face-to-face interview and sharing with such vulnerability and grit. Please check out our show notes for a link to CTNNB1.org and the other things we referenced in this episode. If you're enjoying this show, please be sure to share it with a friend. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. We'd also appreciate a review and a rating. All the stars you can give us would be fantastic. We look forward to sharing more with you next week. Until then, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to stay connected.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player.